On September 20th, 2018, there was an autumnally warm weekday morning. The streets of the small working village of Elan in the Volgograd region were gradually filled with people. Some were rushing to work, some to study. At this time, a 16-year-old student, Lisa N., name changed Ed, was slowly approaching the building of the agricultural college. Squinting from the bright sun, she smiled friendly at acquaintances, nodding in response. For a moment, Lisa stopped, as if deciding to stay a little longer on the street or still enter the building. These fateful seconds played a terrible role in the fate of the girl. At that moment, the countdown of the last hours of her life began. Lisa did not return home either for lunch that day or in the evening. When it noticeably darkened outside, her parents raised the alarm. The disappearance of a teenager is always an emergency. The most experienced investigators are engaged in the investigation of such cases. A few hours later, an investigative operational group arrived in Elan. It was headed by Alexander Sapargaliev, an investigator for particularly important cases of the First Department for the investigation of particularly important cases of the Investigative Committee of Russia for the Volgograd region. Initially, versions were worked out about the involvement in her disappearance of persons with a criminal past or leading an antisocial lifestyle. There could be no question of Lisa herself leaving Elan or leaving home. The girl and her family were characterized positively. In addition, the student was seen that morning near the college building. This means that she planned to go to study, but someone or something prevented her from doing this, says Alexander Sapargaliev. Law enforcement officers began searching for the missing person. For those who have not seen the work behind this, it seems insignificant. In fact, as soon as a message about a child's disappearance is received, a powerful mechanism is launched. Not only police and investigators were involved in the search for Lisa. In such cases, rescuers, military personnel, volunteers, small aviation workers are called in from all over the region. Alexander Sapargaliev coordinated the actions of hundreds of people involved in the search process, personally checked and filtered the incoming information. It was no less important to prevent panic among the population. Elan is a small village, as we said, and rumors about the girl's disappearance quickly turned into talks about a terrible maniac kidnapping teenagers. Leaflets with the missing persons features appeared in the media. Some of them, perhaps unintentionally, or perhaps in pursuit of sensation, fueled the situation by publishing unverified information. Investigators had to check literally everything, every dropped word, every suspicious detail, every publication. Rumors about the girl's disappearance quickly turned into talks about a terrible maniac kidnapping teenagers. Everyone was under suspicion, including the girl's closest friends and even her parents. This is not a biased attitude, but an unambiguous algorithm of the investigation, which must be conducted impartially. Soon, investigators knew all of Lisa's habits and interests, established her route of movement from home to school, divided this microdistrict of Elan into sectors, interrogated every person living there. Together with the operatives, they did not close their eyes, combing abandoned territories around the clock, studying the database of marginal persons, reviewing video recordings taken from outdoor surveillance cameras for significant details. 39-year-old Alexander Tsibulin was already in Moscow, where he rented an apartment with his wife and daughter. It was later that his wife told investigators that in those days she looked at her husband with apprehension. He had never returned from a trip to his mother, who lived in the city of Kotovo, about 170 kilometers from Elan. Even more confusion in her was sown by suddenly spoken words: "If something happens to me, don't believe anything. If I am accused of something, no, I did not kill or rape anyone. In general, the woman knew who she was marrying. In 2008, Alexander was convicted of raping a 12-year-old schoolgirl. While in prison, he corresponded with his future wife, although in each letter he convinced her that the case against him was fabricated. He was released from the colony in 2017 and for the first time tried to lead a normal life. Fate brought him to Moscow, where his firstborn was soon born, and there he found a good part-time job. Despite the fact that the family finally settled in the capital, Cibulin often visited his elderly mother in Kotovo. On September 21st, 2018, he was just returning from his small homeland to Moscow when on the way through Ilan he met an attractive girl. By the end of the first week of the investigation, based on the results of all initial search activities and urgent investigative actions, the group of investigators was left with the main version, which was checked under the strictest secrecy. The detectives no longer doubted that Lisa could have been kidnapped by a person passing through Ilan. This was suggested by the professional intuition of Alexander Sapargaliev, and once again it did not let down the experienced investigator. Together with his colleagues, he compiled a list of all vehicles that fell into the lens of surveillance cameras on the day the girl disappeared, and began to carefully check their owners using all possible forensic and operational reference accounts, including those available to the Ministry of Internal Affairs. One of these car owners turned out to be Alexander Cibulin, who immediately attracted the attention of investigators. Firstly, according to the data of the Information Center of the Internal Affairs Bodies, Cibulin had previously been convicted of a serious violent crime. Secondly, on the day of the girl's disappearance, he was in Ilan for some reason, although he was registered more than 100 kilometers from there in Kotovo, but actually lived in Moscow. All doubts of the members of the investigative operational group were dispelled when the results of the billing connections of the suspect's phone came. Experts found out that his mobile phone and Lisa's phone hit the same towers, including outside the Volgograd region. At this time, investigators had already interrogated Cibulin's mother, who lived in Kotovo, who reported that from September 16, 2018, and for several days, her son was visiting her, and on September 20th, he left for Moscow. This was confirmed by the data of the system of video recording cameras of vehicles of the Regional Traffic Police Department. Being 99% sure that this man was involved in the disappearance of the student from Ilan, Captain of Justice Sapargaliev decided to send an investigative operational group to Moscow to detain the suspect. The appearance of the operatives was not a surprise to him, but his wife was shocked to learn what exactly her husband was accused of. The inspection of the detained man's car only strengthened the investigators' suspicions about Cibulin. Lisa was riding in this car, in the front passenger seat. It was there that a female hair was found, which according to the DNA examination, belonged to the missing student. While talking to the suspect, Alexander Sapargaliev understood the man who sits in front of him and tells the chilling details of the reprisal against the girl he accidentally met, does not repent at all. He gives confessions, but not a single muscle on his face betrays a feeling of regret, behavior characteristic of a real maniac. According to Cibulin, having arrived in Ilan that day, he allegedly got lost and asked the first local resident he saw how to get out of the village. She waved her hand somewhere forward. Cibulin got angry, sit down and show the way. And Lisa herself voluntarily opened the car door. Recalls the interrogation Alexander Sapargaliev. Not immediately, but Cibulin still confessed even when the car was driving through Ilan. he decided to enter into an intimate relationship with the minor, in case of refusal to force her to do it, and then kill. True, at first he still tried to assure the investigators that the girl herself attacked him when she realized that the driver was not going to take her back to Elan, and he was just defending himself with a knife in his hands. Listening to the confused speech, Alexander Sapargaliev understood he is lying. He lies desperately and cowardly, because he still hopes that the detectives will not find the main evidence of guilt, the girl's body. Initially, he tried to confuse the investigation. Moreover, as he thought he had foreseen everything in advance to divert suspicions from himself. Investigators found out that, having left the killed girl in a forest plantation of the Voronezh region, Sibylin took her phone. And then he deliberately made calls from it from the Tambov region, including to the girl's father's number, thus creating the appearance that she is there, and she needs to be searched for in this region, recalls Sapargaliev. I think that, leaving in the company of a convoy, he already understood that no one believed his words. He tried to confuse the investigation. Moreover, as he thought he had foreseen everything in advance to divert suspicions from himself. Perhaps that's why the next day the defendant himself asked to be interrogated and gave everything clean. He calmly told how he committed the crime, where he stopped, how he threatened, how he suppressed the victim's resistance. All the facts voiced were later confirmed by the results of investigative actions and forensic examinations. To consolidate the evidence base, investigators had to find the body of the killed girl. The criminal himself led the detectives to the crime scene, as if a search dog was leading them confidently, accurately, without doubts. During the verification of testimonies on the spot, he even drew the attention of the investigative group to where exactly the grass was trampled under the weight of Lisa's body, which he dragged from the highway. At some point, Sapargaliev even thought that Sibylin seemed to be enjoying his moment of glory, posing for the forensic camera. It was October 4th, almost 2 weeks had passed since Lisa disappeared. Throughout all this difficult, physically and psychologically exhausting time, without sleep and rest, investigators step by step, millimeter by millimeter, were approaching this day. And now they stood silently, clenching their teeth in powerless pity over the remains of a still young girl, joyfully going to meet a new day, and only for a moment stopping at the call of a stranger. It would seem that the case is solved, the killer is caught, all that remains is to gather and secure evidence of his guilt. But something was bothering Alexander Sapargaliev. Studying the personality and criminal past of Sibylin, the investigator with a high degree of confidence assumed Lisa is not the only victim of the detainee. Among the similar unsolved crimes that he carefully studied, committed also in other regions where the defendant had ever been, there was the murder of a young girl. Her body was found in September 2018 in a field near the highway near the city of Podolsk in the Moscow region. The forensic examination established death occurred from mechanical asphyxia and definitely has a criminal nature. Captain of Justice Sapargaliev was almost certain the murder of the young Muscovite could also be the work of Sibylin. The investigator requested a printout of the defendant's phone connections and found out that at the moment when Olga M., name changed Ed, presumably disappeared, Sibylin was at the scene of the crime. The details of the terrible mosaic fell into place. All that remained was to present these facts to the criminal himself. At the next interrogation, Sapargaliev handed the materials to the criminal. After a few minutes, he began to confess. The details of the terrible mosaic fell into place. All that remained was to present these facts to the criminal himself. Since there were no witnesses to those events, we could only rely on the testimony of the accused himself. He also told that literally a month before the murder of Lisa, on August 12, 2018, he was repairing a car in the area of southern Butovo when a girl who allegedly mistook him for a taxi driver called out to him, but deciding to earn some money, Sibylin offered to give her a lift. On the way, he got lost, driving onto a section of the highway under repair. Since he did not deliver the passenger to her destination, she refused to pay for the ride. This led to a conflict between them, the finale of which we already knew, says Sapargaliev. Sibylin assured he killed the girl, accidentally strangled her with a hood string when he tried to pull her out of the car by force. He did not call an ambulance or the police. When he realized that the passenger was dead, he dragged the girl's body into a field, cold-bloodedly got rid of the evidence, cutting off parts of the victim's clothes where his blood had gotten, and drove away. During the verification of testimonies on the spot, even a year after the murder, Sibylin still, with astonishing accuracy, pointed to the place where he had hidden Olga's body. The investigation of this criminal case, which contained so much pain and sorrow, took almost 7 months. All this time, investigators from the Investigative Committee of Russia for the Volgograd region were collecting missing facts piece by piece, checking the received information several times. As the investigators themselves admit, it was a matter of honor for them to gather such a strong evidence base that neither the prosecutor's office nor the court would have the slightest reason to doubt Sibylin's guilt. The court proceedings lasted 5 months, during which the recidivist, just like during the investigation, behaved detachedly and without regrets. The court sentenced Alexander Sibylin to 25 years of imprisonment, which he will serve in a special regime colony, followed by a restriction of freedom for 2 years.